Hi, I'm Jackson Davies. I'm the Canadian working actor. I've done 400 or 500 different episodes of television. And one of the episodes and one of the series I love best was MacGyver, shot here in Vancouver. And now you are listening to, guess what? The MacGyver podcast with Mac Jackson, which is no relation to Jackson Davies, but close.
Hi, I'm Richard Dean Anderson.
Name's MacGyver.
Colonel Jack O'Neill, SG-1.
My name is Pratt, Ernest Pratt.
I always get a happy, tingly feeling when I see those guys.
Name one contract that I failed to execute.
MacGyver.
Oh, here we go.
You're a target, and I don't intend to miss.
Over my rotting corpse. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Glowing eyes, cliché behavior, evilness, that kind of thing.
Is mental illness contagious?
You think?
You can do anything you want to do if you put your mind. Well, you do have a penchant for pulling brilliant ideas out of your butt. Head. Out of your head when we need them. Oh, stuff's already here. I just find a different way to use it.
I like your attitude.
Permission to take a team through the Stargate, sir.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the MacGyver podcast. I'm your host, Mac Jackson. And as you heard from our intro, we're lucky enough to have today someone who is near and dear to my heart, an actor who's been on MacGyver and many, many, many other things, but MacGyver, for this case, quite a few times, and as a recurring character, which is always wonderful. It's Jackson Davies. So here he is, and now we're going to chat naturally.
Mac, first of all, before we start, I want to thank you because you reached out for me to do the podcast. And then what it did is it gave me a chance to kind of revisit that series. You know, as an actor, a lot of the times and during the 80s, certainly during the 80s and into the 90s, I did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different episodic television. I was in a series up in Canada called the Beachcombers, and I was in it for 16 years. So I did a lot of work, but sometimes as an actor, you have to kind of forget, right? You learn your lines, you go do the character, and then when you walk away, you have to kind of walk away at the end of the filming because you're already rehearsing lines for some other character, some other part. So I actually hadn't revisited those shows in, I guess, over 30 years. And this morning I did it. And first of all, I enjoyed the series. I'd forgotten how quirky and fun it was, and it had an interesting little kind of an edge to it. And also the subject matter. I guess I didn't appreciate what the series was about and how it was kind of unique television, certainly at that time in America and probably around the world. And it actually made me smile because I got to revisit some old friends and see their work and realize that I probably should have enjoyed myself a bit more at the time instead of just working. Well, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Hey, Rick Drew was sweet enough to say, you know who you have to get on? Who? And I'm like, I have a list of, the thing about MacGyver and anything really that I've seen that's Richard Dean Anderson related is a consistency for all of his shows are the good people that he worked with. So, because I guess the rule of thumb was if you weren't pleasant to work with, if you had an ego, you weren't going to be brought back. And so I knew that whoever I can get a hold of was going to be conversation gold. But Rick was like, you got to get Jackson on. I'm like, yeah, please. I saw you on social media and it's so funny. I'll tell you, you shave that mustache. It's like Clark Kent and Superman. I'm like, oh, that is him. Okay. Yeah. That's okay. That's Mike Kiley from okay. Yeah.
It's funny, it's getting a little gray, so it's keeping a little bit more thin, right? But and again, I use that mustache for those 200 or 300 episodes I did on Beachcombers, the other show I did. So yeah, it became a little bit of a character.
He told me about that. He goes, you know him from MacGyver. And I'm like, well, I've seen him in other things too, because the thing is, as soon as you see somebody on a show you love, you go, hey, that's the guy who was on MacGyver. Hey, that was Father Lafferty. Oh, all right. So he goes, well, he was on a show for many, many years called Beachcombers. I'm like, well, now I got to look it up. He goes, good luck. It's from Canada. But I last night was able to find something on YouTube, and it was a season 15 episode where your character, who's typically a cop, was being the chef for the day. And, trying to get people to eat whatever it was you were making. And I'll tell you, I get it. I see why that was a hit, because, and you've done enough TV that you could chime in if I'm right or wrong. There's something, it was quirky enough without being obnoxious. You know what I mean? Like, there's some show, there's a really good balance of, if the character is fun to watch, but you don't want to go overboard with the characters or the premise or whatever. And I don't know if it's because it was budget wise or what, but when they're doing the scenes, there's no music. It's only between the scenes. So you're focusing on the characters and their back and forth conversation. Very much like I've noticed with the old BBC, England shows. It's very character, as it should be, I think, character focused. So they're not waiting for the next explosion. It's, the dialogue. And there's a comfort there that I found. And I go, okay, I see this.
Yeah, it was a kind of a family show. And it's very hard to describe, honestly, because, right. One episode would be slapstick. The next would be like an adventure series. And then we had great Indigenous characters and Indigenous stories long. This started in 72.
Yeah.
It went to 1991, right? So that part was interesting. And it was like, and there's a wonderful connection that comes in later to MacGyver. We were out doing stuff on location, right? No one had done filming on the water. And we had a crew, and we were learning as we went along. And Rick Drew came and wrote a number of episodes. Not only did for that show, he actually wrote a couple of episodes for my spin-off series, which we just about did in the late 80s. So I'm a big fan of Rick. But that particular show and how we'd have to do with not a lot of money, the interesting part about that is you have that crew that kind of learned on the go, right? And actors and writers and everything. And then one of the reasons I think I ended up doing MacGyver is that a lot of the crew had gone on to MacGyver, right? One of the producers, Bob Frederickson, Bob Frederick was in MacGyver. I think the first MacGyver I did was basically, and there were kind of similar shows. Sure they had and I think it was neat that Richard didn't use the gun, maybe other than the first couple of shows. He would try to find his way around it. They had a lot of themes for younger audiences as well. So it was a kind of a family show, which Beachcombers was as well. But we were kind of eclectic. God knows what would happen. It could be a drama one week. I think we defined dramedy, right?
Yeah.
It was, and another thing is that because all the actors got a chance, the Vancouver actors got a chance to work in film, we had a base here of not only a crew, but good supporting actors. When the series like MacGyver and all the Stephen J. Cannell shows started to come in the 80s and 90s, we had enough actors that they could fill the supporting parts. And certainly the producers of, John Rich and all the other producers of MacGyver were really open to using Vancouver actors. They didn't just bring everyone in. And it's funny, I was just searching through some of my paper, and after I had done one of the episodes, I think it was 20 questions, he sent me a lovely note that said, thank you very much for this. You get we hope to be able to use you again. So that was nice. You don't usually get a letter from the producer commenting on how nice it was to work with you. And
right.
They were, right.
You're right, because everybody takes everybody for granted, or every situation for granted. So you get people like John Rich and Stephen Downing,
Yeah.
who made sure that the course was set, you never strayed from it, and you also kept your priorities straight, which means take 5 minutes and write somebody a nice letter. Like, let people know how much they're appreciated, you know? Otherwise, you just, like you said, you come in, you say your line, you leave. Did that matter to anybody? I'm not sure. You know, all right, I got paid, but does it matter? And on a show like that, it definitely matters.
And Stephen was such a nice man as well, right? I mean, he that ex, you know, the ex cop, I was going to say RCMP officer. No, that was me in the show, but he was a very decent human being, and we became friends. We kept in contact for a while after the series, and it was. And I worked on Hollywood sets. It really wasn't like a Hollywood set.
Mm-hmm.
They had a kind of a relationship, and I had kind of connected with Richard Dean before through hockey.
Sure.
I'm a terrible hockey player, but I play for the Vancouver Canuck alumni, ex-NHL, our team, right? So I've been playing with those guys actually since around that time. Was it about '88 I started, and actually met him when we were. He was skating for the Hollywood All-Stars. I don't know if you know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Him and Michael J. Fox started that.
Yeah, and Mike, I've known Mike since his birthday was a couple of days ago. I've known Mike since he was 15 years old, right? Yeah. Michael J. Fox. So when he came to town, I was supposed to play hockey with the Hollywood All-Stars, but then the guys from the Canucks said, "No, come on, play with us." So
okay,
that's when I started playing with those guys, and then of course, I mean, and Richard, we used to rent some ice time, and we go out and pick up hockey. And as you know, Richard Dean is really into hockey.
Yeah,
good athlete. You know, probably got his body beaten up a bit too much on the series.
Yeah. He's had some surgeries.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you talk to Danny Shea, his stunt person?
Not yet.
That would be a conversation.
Yeah, I'll have to see. I might have to bug you down the road for his contact info, because again, I'm all for it. It's just a matter of finding and then go, hey, I'm not some strange weird guy. I'm official. Could you that way, because you don't get pestered. But that'd be a lot of fun, because Dan Shea. Are you Dan Shea? I know Dan Shea. He hasn't been on yet. I've been bugging him. I know, because I met him at a Stargate convention a bunch of years ago, and it was great because he's been his stand-in since, on MacGyver, on the TV movies that he's done between MacGyver and Stargate. Dan Shea was there, and there's one called Eyes of a Stranger. Well, he's in front of, I don't know if you've ever done conventions, but everybody gets their time on the stage to talk to the audience and answer questions. And he goes a mile a minute, and he knows it. Well, he couldn't remember names. He's like, all right, there was an episode we did with, and I'm in the audience. I go, the movie was called Eyes of a Stranger. He goes, right. And then there was another one, and I'm like, it was called, he goes, yeah, all right. When I need something, I'm turning to you. So, he is, I got to get him on, because
I know you should. And he's a good guy, again, hockey player. I've known him for 100 years. Yeah.
And they managed to wedge him into Stargate as Sergeant Seiler, because if you're going to be there, you might as well be. He started as just the guy in the background. Well, then they started giving him more and more to do, and you're like, okay, so now he's like a beloved character from that franchise. Because again,
that's cool. That's you know what, that's that feeling of helping out. It's a smaller area. You're not dealing with LA, where everyone comes from a different place or whatever. The community, it's certainly in the 80s and 90s, the community in Vancouver was actually quite small, and everyone helped everyone else out.
I heard stories that before Bridge Studios, it was hard for Canadian actors to get a lot of work. And then when Bridge Studio came along, they kind of opened their arms and went, like Stephen Downing was telling me, he goes, no, it was important to go, why would we drag somebody from LA if we have great actors here? Get that guy. And then, as you know, case in point, if they like you, you get to come back.
Yeah.
You know, your first episode, I believe, was the Madonna, where you were Father Lafferty.
Well, you know what? And I was trying to, when you actually, it wasn't. The
No?
first one, and it was, I did it as a lark. I know this is going to sound really insane. I played a security guard, and God, it was called Early Retirement.
That's
Now,
right. You were.
You wouldn't have known that. I mean, and again, you know, they said, hey, listen, do you want to come in? Because I was still doing this other series at the time, because I think this was like 88 or something, 87, 88 maybe. And I was still doing the other series. And I said, oh, it'd be fun to do a MacGyver. And they said, well, here's this little goofy part. We'll kind of slip it in. And so I went and filmed it in one day or something. So, so I had a character. They always, you know, and so that's when I first kind of started. And then they asked the religious part, and I'm the most unreligious person in the world. So especially, and I couldn't remember how to, you know, thank God I couldn't even
genuflect,
where to do those things, whether to needle. But it was kind of, it's funny because I took a look at it this morning, and I looked like a really bizarre character from Arrested Development. I used my own glasses, my wire glasses. I look like there's that one character in Arrested Development who looks insane, but that's kind of who I looked like. It was neat. It was kind of, and that was a show that people, I get a Christmas show, right? I've done a couple of Christmas shows. I did a great movie of the week called the greatest Christmas pageant ever, and there are certain Christmas movies that just go forever. Now, I think most people have mentioned that the Madonna, that Christmas show, to me, who were MacGyver fans. It seems to be obviously quite popular. I mean, I had a thing with Richard and his mother, remembering his mother, this wonderful actress, Jeanette.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, she played Carol.
Yeah.
And she was also, I'm sure you know this, I found out she was the voice of the mother in Psycho. Is that nuts or what?
Well, you know, and that's something that as an actor, I wish I was a bit more, I wish I had a bit more focus when you're doing these things, because you now can take a look and see her work. I mean, she worked opposite Orson Welles in like Macbeth and all these things. And you take a look at their credits, which we never had IMDb when I started out, right? You go, oh my God, this person did this, she did that. I mean, when you're on the set, you'd love to be able, I wish, and sometimes you feel a little difficult chatting to other actors because, you know, maybe they're trying to learn lines, maybe they don't want to talk to you, maybe I'm just a local guy or whatever.
And you're in the heat of the moment, you got to, you know, stay in character.
I mean, and even sometimes with the director, Michael Caffrey, anyways, the person who directed that, I mean, he was an editor on the 10 Commandments. I mean, would that not be a conversation?
Sheesh.
You know, you'd love to be able, you do that in theater, you know, Mac, you do that in theater when you have a chance in rehearsal, because then you find out about everyone. But when you go back after and take a look and go, I worked with him, oh my God, look at that history, you know? So it's a neat part of, as an actor, working with different people. And it was a treat. I mean, we were working with, at that time, like, the basis of Hollywood talent who worked up through the, you know, the 60s and 70s and 80s, right? It was so cool. And that, I mean, that part was fun to play, and it's a wonderful story to watch, and it works, right? It's kind of clever. It works, and good. It was a fun thing to be in, and I guess he tried to set me up as, they were kind to me. They set me up, I think, as his old buddy that grew up with him, right?
Right.
So we have a relationship.
I love it because when Rick Drew was on, we actually got all teary-eyed talking about the emotional scenes, because, and the reason that the Madonna jumps out at people is, one, it was the only Christmas episode they did, unfortunately, but it's a very personal episode where you get to see MacGyver be kind of Usually he takes charge and he's on top of everything and he's the guy who's calm. In this case, he's in crisis. He's in emotional crisis, and it brings up stuff from his past that we didn't know about. And it's watching him be really emotionally weak. And there's a little shot in there, which I think was a nod to you guys, where he goes, he's introducing your character to Pete, and he goes, Pat Lafferty here. I remember you knocking me into the, playing hockey, knocking me into the walls. And you're like, no way. Well, that I'm like, oh, that's got to be them guys, the two of them skating together. And that's what that's referring to, And then I'll tell you, and this is a thing I noticed about you and your acting, in particular, the MacGyver stuff. You're always very natural and calming, but never boring, never flat. Like, you're interested to see, like, I wanted to see more of Father Lafferty, because you're right, they did set you guys up that you had a history from childhood. And then when you came on the next season as Mike Kiley, the detective, you were in 3 episodes. I think they showed them in a row.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I like him. You and Rick bounced off each other naturally. It didn't feel like it was awkward or weird. So when you guys talk, you went, oh, I'd like to hear them talk more. Like, this is kind of neat. It seemed like, okay, back to the Madonna. You're very calm. You're a priest, but you're not a cliche priest. You know what I mean? I know you're picking on yourself as not knowing what to do. You played it off like you've been doing it 100 years. Like, I know you're worried about, but at that moment, like, you were the calm voice. Like, he's crying in the stairwell towards the end of the episode, and he's talking, saying, I wasn't there for her. Mm-hmm. I wasn't there for her, Pat. I told her I'd be home, and the way that you soothed him, just, it felt natural. I think that's one of the things that makes you, one, an actor that people enjoy, but also they brought you back. It never felt like you were acting.
Well, thank you. And I think during that scene, it's really difficult. It may sound strange. It's really difficult to be the star, the star of a series, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to be there all the time. And I didn't know, I hadn't worked with Richard a lot then, but he had that wonderful moment in that stairway, right?
Yeah.
Where people would probably go, gee whiz, he's an actor. He's just not a character. And I think that's important. And the reason is, sometimes it's difficult. No one really wants to be the star of something, right? Mm-hmm. What you want to be is a really strong support, the quirky person who comes in, adds some lines and whatever, right? Rick had to carry everything. Mm-hmm. He had to be there all the time. And I remember once that I was waiting around to film something, and he went up to the producer and said, why is Davies waiting around? He's been here for 8 hours. He hasn't worked yet. That's insane. And I'm going, Rick, thank you. You don't need to fight my battles. I'm okay. I'm getting paid. But that's the type. He was very protective of the people around him. And Danny, same idea with Dan, right? The people that were close to him were close to him. And he probably didn't get the respect for being as good an actor as he is.
Because he's so natural. You take it for granted.
Yeah. In our business, trust me, is not natural.
Right.
Yeah. You're sitting there, you're hitting a line. You have to make sure you're not in someone's shadow. You got to memorize lines that you've just picked up 20 minutes ago, and they've changed someone's name on it. And it's tough. Mm-hmm. If you're the bad guy, you got something you can chew on. Everyone goes, ooh, yeah, or whatever. I certainly don't think he got the respect he should have as a performer.
Agreed. Well, I mean, that's kind of what I'm about. I mean, I kind of always praise him ever since '85 when MacGyver started. I always say, he's been my idol, not just because of the characters. It's easy to love a character, but if you're not up to par as a human being, then it all falls apart. Whereas I found with him, he's all the stories that everybody that comes on and tells me through the years all tell me how they went, okay, we like Richard. Let's make MacGyver like Richard. And it was the same thing with Stargate. When he went on Stargate, one of the things, like you said, He wanted to be part of an ensemble. That way he didn't have to be in every single scene. He became the producer, the executive producer, because he always had a say and wanted to look out for everybody on the set. So you felt his presence behind the camera as much as you did in front of the camera, And so the smart people who, I think a lot of them from MacGyver then went over to Stargate, we're bringing those morals and that mentality with us. Let's, stay focused on what is our end result for these shows. Let's not stray off. It's not about ego. And Stephen Downing said the same thing. He goes, I would not allow ego on that set.
That's true. No, it was a good set. And I've been on some bad sets. Trust me, that was a good set.
Right. Me too. I've done, I remember doing a play and it just wouldn't end. Because it was one of those that it was successful, which you think, yay. But now they want you to travel to go to that college to do the play. They want you to go to that town to do the play. And it got to the point where you went, I'm not enjoying myself because of the people that I'm dealing with behind the scenes. Either have the egos or not a nice director, who yells at people all the time. You're kind of taking the joy out of acting, Yeah.
And as soon as the joy goes, you should too, right?
Honestly.
No, it's true. I've been very lucky. I kind of tired out of it about 10 or 15 years ago, and then ended up getting into a lot more producing and writing, but also teaching. I teach at the university now.
Nice.
And of course, the kids, if I mention I was in MacGyver, they think it's the new one.
Oh, sheesh. Nope. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny too, because you're right. I do remember seeing Early Retirement, I think is season 3. And so for them to have you in, I remember thinking too, because they always say your first episode was Lady Madonna.
Yeah.
Or not Lady Madonna, the Madonna.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's him. That's him. It's like Don Davis, who played the general in Stargate, was Dana stand-in.
I know, yeah.
And they would throw him sporadically into a couple episodes.
But Don was just a wonderful person, and again a great person to be around. But you're right. I mean, those ubiquitous actors that end up all of a sudden, certainly the Vancouver actors, you can go and go, oh yes, the Jay Brazo's of the world, right?
Yeah. That's right. He was just on it. We were just shooting the bull. So I know we're going to go down rabbit holes, but
no, it's okay.
I know. I'm just warning you. Get a sandwich. Do you remember? Did you have to audition for those parts on MacGyver, or was it because you were already known and they just kind of went, "Hey, let's get Jackson in here"?
I don't think I had to do audition for the security guard because it was like 3 lines, right?
Sure.
2 scenes or so. I think we did an audition for Madonna, and then all the other ones they just asked me to do them, right? So I do remember the audition. Actually, I do remember the audition because I was out in the hallway, actors in the hallway. Should be a TV.
Right. Just people standing around going, I have to read this line. Okay.
Then if you're really tacky, you'd say to the other actors, oh, is that how you're going to do it?
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, okay. Good luck to you. Oh.
And I do remember Richard coming out of a meeting, and they were talking about a problem with that show. And the whole line in Hollywood used to be, oh, we'll fix it in editing.
Right.
And Richard came out and said, well, we'll fix it in syndication. So, and I do remember him saying that. So that was, and then we had this kind of him looking at me and going, oh, I know you. And so that happened. So, and then after that, I think after Madonna, then they asked, and I don't know why it was interesting. It looked like they were, see, at 1990, when I started doing the Mike Kiley character. Yeah.
Yep.
Kiley?
Yep, Kiley. Yep.
So, Kiley, I would just, never even get to say your last name. But I know that Dana at that time was having trouble with his eyesight, right? I think they were trying to look at maybe some way of bringing someone in to give him a bit of a break on some of the things that he'd have to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And again, he was so good. I
Yeah.
mean, just being on a set, being in a scene with him, you would just, I mean, talk about someone who had the right pitch, the right tone for everything, right? He could dial it up and give MacGyver a rough time, but also he could, we have to blend in, right?
Yeah.
When you're the people delivering the plot, and it's great because you set up all these things and then you know who's going to solve it, right?
Obviously.
Most of our time,
Yeah.
is going to solve it, right? MacGyver's going to solve it.
Yeah.
The rest of us spend a lot of our time on set, if you look at it, thinking, trying to figure out how we should solve it, and then he jumps, he beats us to it. But which is funny, you can kind of deliver all the plot, and then he solves it, and quite cleverly too. So I think maybe that's kind of what they were thinking for a while. So this was 90. I think it's 90. I did like 3 episodes.
Yep, and they show them right in a row.
Yeah. So there was it's kind of fun I'd forgotten that they'd actually put my name up on the titles off the top too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Single card opening titles are what they say in the business, right?
I've returned, yes.
That's right. Yes. Moving up the call sheet number, from 37, working my way up to about 7 or 8, right? That's
Well, it's funny too, because it's so subtle that I think, again, it's one of those that I think a casual viewer wouldn't pick up on the fact that, wait, he's recurring. Like even when I watched 20 Questions today, an hour ago. I know them by heart. I could recite them to you, but I'm talking to him as well. I was looking at MacGyver online, and it's funny because they go, either it was the writer's inconsistency, or Mike Kiley really worked hard because he went from detective to captain to lieutenant, and I'm thinking he teamed up with MacGyver and got a lot of cases solved. So why wouldn't he jump the ranks, But it lists that was how they first met, and I watched it. I'm like, no, because when MacGyver walks in that first scene, he's already familiar with your character, even though it's the first time we've seen him. He's like, Mike, what's the deal? And they start talking. I'm like, oh yeah, they're not shaking hands for the first time.
Yeah.
And I thought it's subtle, but wonderful that they thought, let's have him be reoccurring, because if you live in a town and you're dealing with the police, why wouldn't you see the same faces? A lot of shows do the whole, unless they're part of the title cast in every scene or every episode, a lot of times the main character will have to go through and who are you? What business is it of yours? You have no bit. You're not police. Let's skip all that. And to have Mike in there, you go, no, he could vouch for MacGyver.
Yeah.
Who's going to stick his nose in anyway.
Yeah.
It's nice to have him go, leave him alone. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
I thought that was a beautiful addition, and I wish we got to see more.
Yeah. And it was funny because we did talk a bit about doing some more shows. But there was some availability things happening. And when did they go to LA?
The next season. That was the thing. They knew it was going to be their last season. They figured, well, one more, and then, maybe we'll do a couple TV movies, and who knows if anybody's going to care. Well, everybody cares. Yeah. But at that last season, they thought, it's cheaper, it's easier, get everybody back to LA. And then, so anybody that was in Vancouver, unless you wanted to travel, they were just going to.
That's kind of what happened. We were going to, and there was actually another couple of shows they were going to write me into, but I was doing a couple of other things as well, so I wasn't available. So I probably could have picked up another couple. It'd have been fun to go down to LA, but that's always a hassle with immigration and things, and not having a green card, all those other things. And but I certainly enjoyed my time doing it. And 20 Questions was an interesting show. It's funny that you would watch it this morning. I actually, again, rewatched it. I probably shouldn't say rewatched it. It's very rare that I will watch what I've done.
Right. Right.
Most actors will say that, right?
Because you're too busy, one, acting, two, you're never near a TV.
Yeah.
Unless you're hunting yourself down,
Yeah. Plus, also, some of the times you go, "Oh, God, that was good. What was I thinking about there?" And I'm probably we're all a bit more critical of our work than others.
Yeah,
But,
I can't watch myself.
Yeah, no. But I love the idea that there was a whole thing about teenage drinking and I could never pronounce her
Mayim
name.
Bialik.
Maya?
Mayim Bialik.
Mayim. Okay. She was so good in that. She was, I mean, hello. I mean, she had done a kid show before, right?
Well, she had done 2 episodes of MacGyver before this as the same character. This was her third. Yeah, this was her third.
Was she not a lead in another TV series?
She was soon after it.
Oh, okay. So I could say, wow, you could look at that and go, "Ooh, she's got talent."
Yeah.
She do that. She just didn't do that stereotypical young person kind of thing. She has so many different levels, and she turned out okay. I think she made a couple of dollars on The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I just saw her in a commercial where she's like, I don't only play a doctor, I am a doctor. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you went to college and got a degree. That's a nice fallback in case this whole acting thing doesn't work out.
Well, it wasn't the great story that she auditioned for it because she was running low on her insurance for SAG and she hadn't worked for a while.
That's really?
Great story. So she went and thought maybe I can get, because it wasn't a continuing role. It was just a 1 or 2 off.
For Big Bang?
Yeah. She needed enough money. See, all these insurance things for actors, they're tied to how much money you make. And if you get below a certain amount, you lose a lot of the coverage. It's kind of,
okay.
So she needed a bit more to raise her above to that next level. And so I believe that's the story, but I remember her from this one and thinking, oh my God, every once in a while you can be on a set with someone and you go, oh my God, is this person talented? I felt that same with Michael J. Fox when he was 15 years old in a series up in Canada. I went, oh my God, he's great. Veruza Balk too. I don't know if you know that name.
I do.
Movie. We did this thing. Played Loretta Swit's husband in this thing. Oh, in the Christmas pageant, and she was so good. I went to look at Loretta Swit and said, "Forget about us. Everyone's going to be watching her. She is so good." And I had that same feeling with with her in this role. She was great. But the whole idea with the family, the parents were drinking, and MacGyver doing that, and I thought it was quite good. It was an interesting story.
Yeah, and you know what? I was reminded again watching it today that it could have very easily been the cliche after-school special preachiness, which MacGyver never, amazingly enough, and that's down to the writing and the acting and everything, but never felt preachy, never felt forced, even though you do an episode called 20 Questions About a Girl Drinking. You're like, there's going to be a moment where everybody stands around and goes, now didn't you learn your lesson? They don't do that on this because, yes, she's drinking. And like you said, you do a little, the smart writing shows it doesn't come from nowhere. She's a rich kid whose parents bicker and don't really pay attention to her. Oh, and they drink. So, and I love the edge, and I think this is what saves it. Besides the criminal element, which is very tense at the end, and of course, her being in the car about to go over the cliff and everything. MacGyver, who is usually the guy who steps up when he needs to, but doesn't if he doesn't need to. He'll stand in the background. It's not about ego. He's trying to help. And if you watched it recently, you know what I'm talking about. He goes into the family and says, guys, very gently, not with his arms folded, not judgmental. He even says, I'm not judging you guys. Lisa has a problem. And they turn on him. And you watch MacGyver, who, again, a leader among men, get kicked out of their house. Get out of here, they tell him. And he has to go and leave. That typically would not happen on that series. So it's those little beats that make it different from any other episode, and especially when you're so delicate on a after school special potential kind of preachiness. It's amazing. It really
It was a fine line, and by looking at it again, I think you walked that fine line.
right.
Yeah.
Did you watch the other two also?
Yeah, I did. It's funny though. On I think it was 20 Quits. The first I used to give Rick a rough time about his pants. I'm going, what's with MacGyver pants? They were blue jeans.
The jeans that were kind of baggy.
Kind of baggy. They were baggy all over. They looked like kind of like, now we would call them mum jeans, right? So I would give him a time. I said, do you need another belt? I said, you can get a different size. You can get a size but no, they were very cool at that particular time or for that particular.
1990, and there's a scene where as he's walking, he pulls them up too. And I'm like, oh. So when you mentioned that, I'm like, yeah, they were very of the time.
They were a little ahead of the time, certainly ahead of my time anyways, right?
They were before parachute pants.
No, that is. Oh yeah. And again, I forgot. I mean, we were mullet heaven. I mean, other than me, of course, I just had it a little bit, but I mean, that was the greatest hair in the world. I remember thinking one time, my God, you could go to an event and you could go to a charity event or an award event with Richard, and we sometimes sit at the same table or whatever. And I'm going, man, that hair works for him. I mean, people would like he was dressed in Velcro because women would kind of jump on him, kind of. It worked. He had that look. They loved him, right? They loved him.
I always say that fifth season, even he knew his hair got too long, because if you look at the Madonna, right, his hair hung, then hit his shoulders, and then kind of laid there, and you're going, I'm all for shaggy hair to a point, but even then, there's an episode later on where he says, he's fighting with Pete, and he goes, I need a vacation, I need a rest, and I need a haircut, and I'm like, that's because of how snotty that hair got. And so by season 6, they cut it, and they're like, that's better.
But it did look good under a hockey helmet.
Sure. Yeah. And it's funny too, because he even says, he's like, I wasn't trying to go for a style. I'm a hockey guy. This is what hockey guys do.
That's true.
And the producers, I guess, just said, don't get it too long in the front, because if it hangs down as you're doing something, it would cover your face completely.
We need those eyes.
Yeah.
It's funny you asked me if I watched the other episodes. I obviously really remember Lesson in Evil, but I'm going to be totally honest with you. Okay. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I saw on the list Wall, and I went,
yeah, Wall. The Wall. Yeah.
And I went, I have no idea what that was about. I watched it and do not remember doing one of those scenes.
Wow.
Now, again, I didn't do drugs. But it must have been, and it was an interesting thing for me too, to think, how could you go, I think I was probably in 3 or 4 scenes or whatever. And in an interest, I must have been, it may have been one of those times when I was doing 2 or 3 series at the same time. I used to do a lot of guest star, whether the X-Files or anything, all these other things. In the 90s, I was working a hell of a lot. And honest to God, even when I watched it, I went like, geez, why wouldn't I remember? What was this all about? Someone could have had a contest with me and showed me those clips, and I just said, I don't know, I have no idea.
Right.
But it was interesting. I mean, that was actually one of the few times I think I pulled a gun, which is kind of fun. But no, again, so that's the Wall. Interesting, the whole idea about, the East Berlin. When did the Wall come down?
Before that, and I'll tell you a neat little thing. Rick Drew tells me he was in contact with G. Gordon Liddy, who coincidentally had been on 2 seasons before on an episode of MacGyver. So he's talking to him about it, and G. Gordon Liddy is the guy who gave him the information on that laser that shoots across and picks up the sound.
Very cool.
So so he's like, I got to write all, this is great stuff. So it was accurate. It wasn't like TV make-believe, which I think MacGyver always stood out for. Let's make it accurate. Let's get the science. Unless a kid is going to blow himself up, we're not going to show a kid how to blow himself up. But everything else. Let's get the science right. And that was one of those where he talked to him and he goes, you know, Chico like would give him like a heads up of, here's some other things that, you know, happen that you don't need to put in your, and would tell him like cool secrets. So he's like, yeah. And I could see why maybe in that episode, you're in the stairwell a lot, as I recall.
Yeah, I do a lot of stairwell acting and a lot of outside acting.
And it's very dark
in
that stairwell. So I could see why that would click.
Don't, I mean, it's nice you're trying to cover my butt, but it's bizarre that I, out of that one. But I guess there are some others that I remember moments of a bit more. And again, it was a lesson to me. And oh my God, right? You know, you can be working too much. Now, again, lessons in evil. I mean, I remember the smells of those rooms. I mean, it was, and maybe had a lot to do with William Shepherd, you know, the guy who played the
Zito. Yeah, Dr. Zito.
He was scary just to be on set with, right?
Yeah.
He'd kind of look at you and you go, oh, okay, whatever.
Do you like me or don't you like me? Because I can fix it, whatever it is. Just like me.
Well, it was very dark. Mm-hmm. There was a lot going on.
That was one of it was a sequel to a 4th season episode, which I appreciate the fact that they brought back a storyline and a character.
So those flashbacks were from the original one? I did not know that.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay.
And that's a heck of an episode. If you go back and watch that, Gary Chalk and I were talking about it because he played the police detective.
He's in it. Yeah, of course he is. Yeah.
And again, you could tell very much, obviously, a Silence of the Lambs inspired character, which is fine as long as you don't blatantly rip it off. I understand being inspired, but Dr. Zito was like the second closest arch enemy to MacGyver, Murdoch being first. And then Dr. Zito, I would have loved to have seen more of him because you're right. He's scary to look at. And he talks calm, but he's going to kill you.
He's got that good voice too, right?
Yeah.
It's got the good tubes.
Yeah.
At the end, when they show him peeling that peeling the pin out of his stomach.
Yes.
Then now, did he ever come back?
No. Unfortunately, no. And his son is another great actor who was on Supernatural a lot. He's in everything, really. Doctor Who. He was even on the remake that we won't talk about of MacGyver. Huh?
Yeah, I didn't know.
He was on that playing his father's part as like not the same character, but they used the same name. So like he was like, "Yes, my name is Dr. Zito." Wink. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of a neat thing. I didn't know that they were father and son.
That's interesting. William Garrity directed that. Bill, who was the director of photography for a number of years, right?
Yep.
And then he directed that, and he's a good director. It's again how that small world is. I may have been. There's another reason I couldn't do a lot more. I was doing a stage show at that time called The Wild Guys. It was written as a 1-act play, but I worked with we workshopped it into a 2-act play. There is an end to the story, I promise you. So we did it as a 2-act, and it was a funny show about these guys who go out on a men's sensitivity weekend and get lost. And I adapted it. I adapted it as a film script, and we got William to direct it, Gary, and Bob Frederick produced it, who was on MacGyver. So that we have that kind of little connection again. And he's a great person, a wonderful person. William, I don't know if you've ever talked to Bill, and he went from like director of photography to director, right? And you probably know the thing. They used to have a great B camera group that would go out and shoot all the close-ups.
Sure.
Because it would take time to, far better to move everyone on to another setup and then bring someone in hands who looked like.
That's all you need to do is have the hands doing,
A lot of hand acting. That show, and actually we did film part of it at Riverview, which was a mental institution in Vancouver.
Right.
Now that is strange to be in a place where a little section of it, right?
Yeah.
That you're using. And there's stories, there's souls, there's all sorts of things.
The metal staircase that's used in that is now that was also again used in the first episode of the 4th season of MacGyver. So I recognize, I'm like, oh, they're using the same hospital. Oh, and then it was on Dead Zone. And, you know, I could go down the list.
Yeah, I've done a couple of different.
Great location.
Yeah.
But scary. Like it really has that.
There's a history. And that history is in those staircases. The history is in those rooms and around that equipment. Oh, God.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it really does add, what do they say? It's the other character is yours, is the setting. And so you're right. I can smell it. And I haven't been there. I've never been there. I hope to someday see it, but you can smell the mustiness. You can smell the rainwater.
A horrific place. I'm glad it was shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that was the last one I got to do. I would see I'd see Rick around at different things, it's celebrity golf or hockey, right? And
sure.
And I haven't run into him in a long, long time. I didn't do any of the Stargate things.
I know, and that kills me, by the way.
Yeah.
Typically they would get, like Rick in particular would go, oh, get Don Davis and get that guy. And I'm like, get Jackson. Like I thinking, because again, you were always such a likable actor that I'm like, I want to see more of him, and you would have been great.
It's it's probably the only actor who didn't, and I don't know why. A combination of work, and maybe by that time I was starting to get a little tired of it. I mean, I've been a professional actor since I was 17 years old, right? So I had done nothing else but act and no training. I tell my students at the university, I said, you guys have got more training in theater and film than I ever had, right? I came out of high school and kind of learned it on the fly, but kind of just a little tired of it all. I don't get me wrong, I still write, and I'm working on a couple of different pilots that are things that I will do, that I have control over, but that part of it is
well, it could be grueling too, because Cliff Simon and I were talking, and he goes, we were talking about the fact that, hey, it doesn't matter if you're on a hit show. You could be like, again, Beachcombers is a great example. You're on that for 16 years. Great. Once it's over, it's back to the line, go back to reading. So you're like, but I'm somebody.
Yeah. No.
Like, don't you understand? I should just walk in and get this. Don't you? No. Oh,
it is interesting how that happens. It's, what have you done for me lately? Right.
It's I got to a point in my life where I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep acting? Is that going to be my thing? Because and I've realized this in the last couple of years, I have many, many, many irons in the fire, which I'm not complaining about. But I remember in my 20s going, all right, you have to focus mainly on one thing. You don't shut any doors. Are you going to do music? Are you going to write songs? Are you going to perform? You're going to be an actor. Okay. Are you going to be a writer? What are you going to do? And I thought, I'm never going to move to LA or New York. I don't want to, but I'm not going to shut the door if a part came my way. And now, and this also ducktails into something I want to ask you about, writing and producing. Well, I could do that. I'm up for, if somebody wants me to do acting, I'll do that. But in the world that we live in now, you don't have to go to somebody and go, can I write this? Can I make this happen? Will you give me permission? You go, if nobody's going to ask me to do it, I'm going to do it myself. You can produce your own, like I do. I don't know if you saw, I do an ongoing audio series that I write, perform, produce, continuing the adventures of MacGyver, because I have to create, I have to write, but I don't want to go to auditions. I don't want to go, could I please play that? No, I can't. The heartache, I think, alone, and you might be able to speak to this, a character that maybe you wanted to play so bad, but you didn't get, that crushes me. And then to have to pick up, sit in a room again with a script, try out, and hope you get it. Like, I could see that eventually, like you said, just going, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, right?
Well, it's the thing I miss, and it's probably one of the reasons I miss the creative thing. Again, when we started the Beachcombers, I had a say in that, my character, right?
Oh, okay.
So I had that. I've done probably 150 sketch comedy shows where I was also the lead writer, right? I mean, I started Rick Moranis, Dave Thomas, all those guys from McKinsey Brothers. I'd worked with those guys before SCTV, right? So I've been in the room. I've written all sorts of. I used to have a company that wrote television commercials, right, for me. So I would write for me pretty well, and I love that creative part. In the late 90s, with the American stuff that was coming up, you couldn't change a comma, right? You could not take ownership in any part. And the creative process wasn't the Rick Drews of the world, the John Shepards of the world, who were close. You could say, let's talk about this. Can we kind of quirk it? They're down in LA, right? So we had no connection to that. So I felt I was getting to be a bit attached from the creative part. And I didn't mind, and I found a lot of the stuff I was getting to audition for was something I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't need to play one more cop and put it on my resume, right? I mean, good God, I played more FBI guys in the world.
You and Gary Chalk. I always say.
Yeah, Chalk has done more.
Right.
Chalk's done probably more cops than I have. My only claim to fame is when I did the movie, the Stakeout movie, that they wrote my character into a Mad Magazine episode. So that after doing that, I think, do I need to act anymore?
Right.
If I've been in a Mad Magazine, right? I don't have to. But that aspect of it, I know I produced a couple of movies of the week. I've directed a couple. I would take stage shows, because it's the material sometimes that you're giving life support to. You feel like you're giving that. But so I wanted to change that a bit. And we talked a little earlier about the Wild Guys. There was another one called The Foursome, a great golfing, written by Norm Foster, fabulous comic writer. And I adapted, I did the stage shows of those. And we're talking probably for off and on, maybe a year or two. So I knew every breath in that stage show. I knew what line worked. And if it didn't work, I tweaked it so it would work. So it wasn't like you're doing something for the first time, like you're doing episodic television, right? You have no idea whether it's going to work. I knew these shows worked. So I took these two shows and adapted them into feature films, which we both shot. One I got to star in, the golf one I didn't, because I wasn't a big enough name, right? But it was an interesting thing, because I would certainly sit in the editing of the Wild Guys, and the editor was going to cut something. I said, no. I said, it's funny, you need 3 beats. He goes, well, I said, listen, I've done this show 200 times. You give it 3 beats, the audience at home is going to laugh.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. I got involved in that for a while. And now I'm just, I love this. I know, again, I love this new world of podcasts. I call it short content, right? We're just talking. Of course,
Shoot
I'm
the
going
ball.
on today, so maybe it's becoming longer than short content.
You go on as long as you want.
There is a market for that. And that's one of the things I teach my students. I teach all my acting students, I make them learn how to edit and write short content and create characters, right? What I would do is I'd also, as an actor, I had a couple different characters, kind of a bumbling kind of cop, or bumbling kind of characters that I used in TV series that won all sorts of, one of them won the best commercial campaign in Canada. I would write it, I was in it, right? So I'm still kind of hanging on to that. The world has changed that way. I'm now kind of shifting gears, and I think, and it's funny, because I was looking at some notes that I had written years ago that said, everyone will become their own broadcaster. And I went, I'm looking at this now and go, God, I wish I should have moved faster on it. But that is, whether you're a company doing your own videos, whether you're an actor doing your own videos, as in your case, you're your own producer. You've become your own, you're your own network. This is a network.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was the thing. I ended up forming the Forever Adventure Network because, not for me, none of this is for my glory. It's a vocation. I think I'm sure you've said the same thing to your students. If you're going to do this, now I don't make a cent, but it's not about money. It's about wanting to contribute positively to the world and celebrate the things that have influenced me and I think are the good stuff in the world. So with all the irons in the fire, I thought I better throw these together. How do I do that? A site, a network. like you said. So that way I could just tell people, go to the Forever Adventure Network. You're going to see bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
Something for everybody. But it is a vocation. It has to be. Otherwise, why do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's really like you said, you continue to write and produce. You don't have to, but you want to. You don't want to do the grind for acting. So you go, that's enough. Now you're not closing the door. I'm sure if somebody knocked on your door and said, listen, we need Mike Kiley back in over, of course you'd show up. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. If it's interesting, if it's well written enough, and it's there for the right reason. Yeah, no,
Right.
Yeah, and I probably will do it. I'll probably dial down the teaching and maybe go back. Again, I was always doing theater. My thing in life is I would always find time, even if I would not do other work, to do at least one stage show a year.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an actor, that for me anyways, that kept me grounded, and I enjoy doing that. I enjoy that system of rehearsal. I enjoy the idea of trying things. In film, you get maybe 3 takes at it, right? Stage shows, if I'm running it for a year, I got 100 takes, right?
Right.
And then all those things get filed away and go, okay, that beat before that works. I'm going to save that for the next time I have a similar beat.
I had John Carradine on, who obviously great actors in Twilight Zone and a couple episodes of MacGyver, but also wrote some episodes. We were talking, and he's retired. He's got his picture on his Facebook of doing Tai Chi, and but we were saying that same type of thing where I was asking, do you prefer, well, I guess there's strengths and weaknesses to all of it. Typically, do you like doing stage stuff or do you like doing film stuff more? Because there are give and take for each, right? Do you have a preference? Or did you have a preference?
You know what's interesting? Early on in my career, I would always say theater, because in Vancouver, I got to a position where I could do any stage show I wanted. So the shows that were running on Broadway, we would do in Vancouver, and I'd play the leads. So I would play the leads in all these things. So I got a chance to do all these great stage shows and characters, and I enjoy that process. Occasionally, when you get a chance to do a film or a TV series episodic, and again, it's very rare that the writing's good. The writing is not superb, and I don't know how it can be, right? I mean, I take it back, because I tell you, there are some things now on television or streaming services where the scripts are freaking wonderful.
Sure.
And you go, oh my God. Well, they're actually doing the job on it. They're not like, Rick's done some wonderful scripts. He's, very clever, and John kept very clever. And it's the quality of it, right? That really, so yeah, if I got a chance to do a movie, the movies in Canada, they're going to hate me, any Canadians who listen to this. The business model of a Canadian feature film, or to tell you that there is no business model, it just doesn't work. You can have a movie that has won all sorts of awards or something like that, and it will get no traction. Mm-hmm. And that's for a number of reasons. We really don't own the theaters, right? Not to say anything against the States, but most of those theaters are basically controlled by an American entertainment machine, which is a massive, certainly the film is a massive machine. And they can really dictate who or what you're going to show, right? We can survive a little bit on TV because we have content rules in Canada. You have to have a certain amount of Canadian content on the shows. It's very strange that even after all these years, 1952, we had 2 channels, one mostly American, second some Canadian, and here we are, 50 or 60 or 70 years later, 70 years later, with maybe one network that has kind of Canadian. CBC isn't even totally Canadian, right?
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for Canadian writers and producers, and actually it's interesting for the young students, is they see American television as the Holy Grail. I mean, I can't tell you, Matt, how many times people would say, well, when I was in my 30s, when are you going to move to the States? Or later, why didn't you move to the States?
Sure.
And they feel a little disappointed, like I've let them down. I haven't gone to the States and been, become a star in the States. Do I think I could have become a star in the States? I don't know. I could have become a good working actor. I would have worked. But to me, it was more important to have something here that you're working at, that the young actors in high school or the small towns or the universities knows that it's really not just about working for the American machine. It's okay to tell Canadian stories. The Schitt's Creeks of the world. I mean, that kind of crept up on people. That was popular. All sorts of things. We kind of have to do the quirky stuff. We have to do the cheaper stuff. We can't afford, that when we were doing our series was costing $200,000 an episode. I mean, you can't, that's what they pay for food now on the show.
Yeah. So, but the payoff is the quirkiness makes it unique in a wonderful way, because nothing else is like it.
No. And things like Letterkenny, I don't know if you've ever seen that. Oh, you've got to write this down. Okay.
All right.
Letterkenny.
Letterkenny.
Yeah. Okay. And I may have just really screwed your mind for a while. It's from Eastern Canada, about these hockey players and boozers. It's kind of like taking the McKenzie brothers and then kind of having them update them. And it's I don't know if you saw Trailer Park Boys, right?
Sure, I've seen some of that.
Yeah, people kind of accepted that. That was kind of quirkiness. But Letterkenny, I hadn't watched it until I took an airplane. Air Canada in Canada actually will show Canadian a TV series, and honest to God, I watched, I don't know, 20 of them. They're like half-hour shows, right?
Sure.
Just that. And oh my God, it is so bizarre. So you talk about quirky.
Yeah.
You watch that and listen. You email me after and tell me that's the quirkiest thing you've ever seen.
Do you ever go? I mean, I see that you're on Facebook, but have you been on lately?
Oh yeah, I do most of my Facebook stuff on for the Beachcomber TV series, because we did 369 episodes, and of those 369 episodes, only like 60 are available. So I've been trying to get the network, who has them in the vault, CBC, to put them on their streaming service.
Okay.
I mean, I've got fans every day. I could probably click on right now. And the great thing about the Facebook site is fans from all over the world. Probably you get that connection too, right?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. There's the guy in France who I'm sure, if he hasn't talked to you yet, he's going to. He's looking for, his name's Mark. He's trying to have a MacGyver museum in France. So he's trying to get all the memorabilia he can. So if he hasn't reached out to you yet, when he does, you can mention me and he'll go, okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we're in our 50th anniversary of the show going on the air is in 2022. So we're trying to, that would be a great time to kind of trigger the corporation to stream it. And we're going to do things for tourism. There's going to be, we're going to invite the fans from all over the world, because when we were on in Australia, in England and Germany. I mean, we were on every day after school. Now, as someone who was an aficionado of television, you realize if you're stripped, I mean, that term, right? Every day after school, or streaming now, I guess.
Sure.
Every day these kids would come home from school and watch this really quirky show from Canada about, I mean, talk about a slug line, about a Greek guy who goes out on a boat with the First Nations kids and they pick up logs, and you go, what? How's that?
It's like Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing, right?
About what? But they would watch the show, and it helped also that we were the first show that really got into Indigenous characters and Indigenous stories. That again, our Indigenous people were invisible in Canada. I mean, they could not see themselves on television. They didn't exist except for our show, right? Sure. In the stories. So, I mean, that was important. And we had, when you hunt for 19 years, you have 2 or 3 generations who watch you, right? The kids watch you. They get a little tired when they're 18 years old. They're not going to watch that show. The grandparents that kind of watch it. We were in a time also when there was like 3 channels.
Right.
So we were up, it was good. So of 3 choices we had, I mean, I remember someone saying in the 70s, we had like 3 or 4 million people watching us. Now at that time, Hockey Night in Canada had 3 or 4 million. That was a massive one. That was the top show in Canada. And it was a Canadian show. up against all the American ones. And it went that way for a long time. So that series, and when we have our, I hope our little, our anniversary, and we're getting tourism involved, and we're going to invite people from all over the world. And the beautiful thing about our show, and you probably don't realize that, you watched a couple, is that Molly's Reach, the little cafe, and that's a real place.
Sure.
So right now, today, we could go and walk into Molly's Reach and sit on that set, because we made a building into our set.
Wow.
You walk down the steps where the marina is, that's still there. The lower part of Gibson's, as we call it, probably looks the same
Sure.
than it did in the 70s and 80s.
Wow.
So it's like going to Universal Studios and you're seeing a mock-up of a set.
Yeah.
But it's real.
It's that place. Like, oh.
There is no place, I don't think, maybe Mayberry or whatever, maybe that, but it's not changed.
Right.
That set is still there. The back alley's the same. You could talk about deja vu. You could go to Gibson's and walk around and go, oh, I remember that scene. It was shot right here. I remember that scene was shot right here.
I love that so much.
I'm walking on this pier. That's where Relic's boat was, right there. That's where he moored it. That's it.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere else you could do that. So for this new thing called screen tourism, I hope we're going to get our government to embrace that, because we can invite these people all over the world, and they could come back and they could relive their memories.
Well, I think you'll be successful, because Paul Reiser, on his own, fought to have the DVDs released of Mad About You.
Yeah.
Like, even now, even though he's busy, he's still going, guys, just release all the episodes. Now, last year, right before the pandemic, they filmed a bunch of new episodes.
Yeah.
And they're great. They're just like picking up where they left off. And he wants to do more, but because of the pandemic, they had to stop. But he's going, you got to get on a good network. We got to put these out. So if you're doing the same thing, just keep at it, because it matters. And like you said, you have how many generations that will stand behind you and fight for it.
Yeah, and they are. And people from Germany, people from New Zealand. I have to go, and they get a little carried away once on the Facebook site, right?
Do they?
But they get a little. But they're passionate, and they want to see this show, that they have these great memories of it. No DVDs were ever released, right? So
that's nuts. That's crazy.
Max, you have stuff that people haven't. Their favorite shows. It'd be like you watching MacGyver once
and then never seeing it again.
Never see it again. And you go, whoa. What about that show? What about this? And it's surprised how much they, other than we did strip it for a while in Canada. And I think that solidified it too, certainly like it did around the world. So that was that was in 80 to 82. And so anything after that actually, how bizarre this is? We produced 2 movies of the week. We revisited it 2002, 2004, really well received. But even at the time we did in 1990, we did the final episode, like the final episode of, it's only been aired once.
Oh,
never been aired again.
Come on.
I know. Can you believe that?
No, especially with digital or whatever, just throw it on in the middle of the night. Like, let's,
Well, you know what? I mean, talk about streaming if you have the ability to pick up. Again, some of the shows, 13 of the episodes are in Prime US, which is funny because they're not on Prime Canada, which I think is kind of bizarre.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's actually someone on Prime US who watched it, they said they just stumbled upon it and they said, oh, this is a great show. And it was a great line. She said, it's a bit different. And that's what we are. Yeah. We are. You can't.
Well, wonderfully different. Not wonderfully. It's not like odd. When somebody goes, that's different. It's not that. It's charming and it's wonderful and sincere.
Very, very quirky. Very quirky.
You were talking about. You reminded me. I talking about being able to go on to these locations. The other day, my family and I are sitting in the living room, and my kids, my son, who will listen to this episode 1 trillion times. Because like we watch the Madonna every Christmas now. It's become
cool.
We cry every time, but it's worth it. But we're sitting in the living room and something came up where it said, if you were able to go on vacation anywhere in the world, where would you go? Before I could answer, my wife goes, I already know what you're going to say. I go, okay. Ireland? I said, sure. and Vancouver. Vancouver, because all my favorite shows were filmed there. And I'd walk down the street and go, oh, Highlander was right there, and MacGyver was here. Oh, and this was from that, like you said, this episode, and I'm standing in the spot where he said this line, take my picture. Like that would just be my vacation.
Yeah. No, it's Vancouver looks good. You'd like Vancouver. Now,
I love Vancouver. I'm in Pennsylvania, basically Scranton.
Scranton.
Scranton. It's Dixon City, but it's Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I love where I am, but man, you're right. I would love to just spend time in Vancouver. The food trucks alone, I always say, would be worth it because we don't have that here.
Well, I tell you, the food on sets, on Vancouver sets, it's like a 4-star restaurant. Oh my God. I mean, it's and now everyone accepts that you have to do that. When we produced our series, I produced the 2 movies rather. I mean, we were spending more on food in that movie that we'd probably, spend on the whole couple of Beachcomber episodes.
Yeah.
But it's a great place to spend some time. I too would like to go to Ireland. I watched Feeding Phil.
Somebody Feed Phil. We watch that. That's a staple in our house. Love it because he's sweet and he's charming, and it helps you appreciate people. Yeah,
and you know what? It's enjoyable.
Yeah.
But they did Ireland one other night, and again, it's neat. But again, Vancouver's fun. You should. It's funny because I have never done one of those fan things. And
a convention.
I think we're going to hook up next in 2022 or that season 2022 to 2023, and because of the anniversary, and maybe we have some DVDs or marketing or merch to sell. But it would be a lot of my friends, the Gary Chalks of the world, do that all the time. I never got involved in the shows that have the fanatical audiences, other than I guess MacGyver. Hey, I was in Athens doing a TV movie, and the cab driver said, and he remembered Lazarus. And I'm going, Lazarus? So then the X-Files that I did, he remembered, and I'm going, oh, okay, and then you forget sometimes. This was before social media, right? You forget that people all around the world see you.
Yeah.
And they're not just numbers anymore. They're human beings. They have a passion. They have things. We have people here that when those shows were on, we had some Beachcombers of that 85 and up that are on Prime now, that ended up on Aboriginal People's Television Network here because of the First Nations, which is great. They were great. And we'd have people that watched our show when they were kids. They'd PVR the show, and then with their kids, wait to Sunday night at 7 o'clock when we were on for all those years, and then have a family viewing of the Beachcombers, trying to relive what their youth was like.
Yep.
Now, the world's a different place than it was in the 70s and certainly in the 80s. And I love that all of a sudden there's a new generation of kids who really like the show because they're watching it now through the in 2018 or 2020 or 2021. Mm-hmm. And when people say, oh, well, it won't travel, it doesn't travel, it's not sophisticated, it's not, MacGyver still works. That's
right, it does. You know why? Because it never locked itself into the time. It never felt like an 80s, 90s show because it's a guy who's just being natural. He's not going, wait a minute, what's hip? What do I have to wear? Let me put on the jazzy hat or the jam shirt or the
maybe other than those
pants. Yeah. Okay, but I think that was a Rick choice because from what I understand, everybody tells me, and I believe it because I've seen the same wardrobe. He would show up on set, and unless he was had to wear a particular outfit, they would just film him in what he walked. It was his own wardrobe. So that I love that because then I would see the same jacket or shirt or whatever in like a TV movie or later on Stargate. I'm like, oh, he's wearing the same thing he wore on this episode of MacGyver. Like, that's kind of cool. So I'm thinking that wasn't wardrobe's fault with those pants. I think I
think they were Rick pants.
Yeah.
He was also very conscious about keeping in shape. You probably heard that he had on set, had a gym, a little mini gym.
Did he?
Yeah. So he was very conscious about how the physicality of that character. Plus, also, he was hurting. I mean, the actors like to do their own stunts. It's so stupid. I mean, I still have a hearing problem for someone was going to shoot a gun behind my head or something like that. And they said, we can put it in. I said, no, I want that feeling. My ears rang for 4 years, right?
Wow.
And also I used to be very physical and even in the Beach, my idea would be that kind of clumsy character. And they come back to haunt you when you get my age, right? You
Yeah.
go, oh.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, even my son is like, wow, Rick would do his own stunts. And you could see it. I mean, you're watching him do 99.9% of these stunts, unless he was going to get hurt, in which case they get Dan Shea or somebody to, throw them off a building. But you're right. He's had back surgery, knee surgery since then. But they would actually, who is it? Stephen Downing was like, we tell him, Rick, this weekend, I know you want to go skiing.
Yeah.
Please don't go skiing. Oh, no, I won't. And then they'd come back. They're like, you went skiing, didn't you? Yeah, I went skiing. And he used to do that extreme type of thing where he'd jump off a cliff. I've seen footage with him skiing off cliffs and then landing and, like, man.
I know.
Adrenaline. I mean, on a selfish side, it works great for the audience because, what you're seeing is real. On the other side of it, though, oh boy, I don't envy all your producers.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Sure.
I'll tell you my point of view, and then you tell me yours. Acting, love. Writing, love. I feel like it's compulsion. But for you, producing, it's I have to have the sense of control. I want things to move forward, and I know that if I do it, it's gonna. You know what I mean? Like for me, the producing part is more about I want it done right. I want it done on time. How about you? What is your motivation for producing? Because I always feel like it's out of necessity.
It depends. It's produce movies of the week, produce some some other short form and things like that. It's tough. What you need to do, I guess, is hire everyone who's better than you, so you don't have to have that battle. I mean, I love the writing part. If I could make a living writing right now, and probably when I stop teaching, I will probably just write.
Sure.
And again, I'm having fun. As I mentioned before, I've got all this behind me here. I don't know whether, I mean, that's just the top of the boxes with all that stuff. So you're basically talking 50 years of work. And I tend to do, as my wife calls it, a hoarding. I call it being collectors. So I go through these things and whether they're a call sheet or something from a MacGyver or a script from MacGyver, I go and take a look at the notes. So what I'm slowly doing is I'm actually scanning all this stuff. I'm not just going to give it to the archives in Canada, just want you to pack it up. They really just want the Beachcombers because again, I have most of the scripts but what I find, and I wrote a book actually about the Beachcombers.
I remember that. Yeah, I saw you at one of your interviews. Which
is very cool. But I wish I'd have taken more notes. If I would have, I'd remember doing the wall, right?
Yeah.
But that writing part of it is unique. And I think this world, and again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know or your listeners, you realize it's all about stories. And sometimes the stories are longer than others, but they're all stories. It's a series of stories, a tapestry of stories. And I'm kind of like reliving those stories and doing a little writing of those things now and on certain things that will trigger it. We had a terrible thing here where for Indigenous, we had residential schools. They would take Indigenous children from the parents and make, in the Catholic Church, would put them in these, they wanted to, as they said, get the Indian out of the Indian.
Oh.
And they did all across Canada. It started in the 1900s and it went into the 70s and 80s. And it was terrible. And we just found that they've done some searches and found like the bodies of 250.
I heard about that. Yes.
So what I did is, again, I kind of, the story that I wanted to share with my friend, people on Facebook or whatever, was me being a young actor and actually doing a couple of performances in these terrible residential schools. And at the time realizing how there was something wrong. And I remember telling the company manager after, I said, something's wrong here. No one's happy. There's just fear. There's dread. There's something is not well here. And for me to revisit that, 50 years later, 55 years later, was something. So those are the stories that now as a writer, I find interesting. Now, are they interesting to anyone else? I don't know.
They
But,
can be.
You just want to tell those stories, and you want to tell stories. And it's kind of a little reflection on Canada,
Mm-hmm.
on life that was at that time. And I probably will do that with the Beachcombers, because I mean, MacGyver did, what did he do, 7-8 years? I can't remember.
7 years.
7, yeah. So during an interesting time, right? That was, the late 80s, 80, 85?
Yep, late 85 till
So what
92.
happened? 85 to the early 90s, right?
Yeah.
In our particular show, we're talking like 72 to 91.
Mhm.
So a huge thing happened. The world changed. And it's interesting to take a look at the episodes, the writing, the character, the stories we were telling. Was that a reflection of the time and how that time changed over 19 years? It's really kind of interesting. And that's probably that's going to be my next real journey. And I hope to be able to do that in time for the 50th anniversary, to take a real look back. And I think we may even do some podcasts or video casts of with some of the actors and talk about different episodes, pick a couple different episodes, and why that episode was important to that person, why that episode was important to that time. Just like we were talking about the MacGyver one, about the alcohol and young kids. You could you could say drugs now.
Sure.
You could say, you know what, just take out booze and put in drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where it was at that particular time in the history of the United States, and what changed. Did anything change over that? Have things changed?
Yeah, and it's all about delivery, I think. I mean, I think, that's where the real skill is, because we could all, wave a flag and say, hey, this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Harry Chapin always used to say, he was known as Gapin' Chapin in the 60s, and which is why nobody ever heard of him, because he would preach. Well, then he learned, wait a minute, you can get your message across just as powerful, but not be as ham-fisted.
Yeah.
And I think that really would be the trick. Do you find yourself when you're writing, like I do, if I get started, it's an addiction. I'm like, I got to finish. All right, I know I got to go to sleep, but I want to get from this part to at least this part. Because
good on you for doing that.
Yeah.
I most of the stuff I write is humorous, we hope. But so I will actually, I sometimes will take a day to write 4 sentences just because I want it perfectly, the sounds. And that's something I've always appreciated as an actor who did a lot of comedy. And I've done stand-up, I've written stand-up, I've written, like I said, books. I've written, used to write a lot of events where I would host. So I would always write, and great, because I could always, because the audience knew who I was, I could relate to to what I was doing. I played the skipper of the Exxon Valdez, right? I'm the guy that,
oops.
And whoops, yeah. And the line would always be, no, I said Tanqueray on the rocks. But it's you can go back and it's nice to have maybe because I'm thinking a bit more in the retro world, as I have now twins. I have my first grandchildren, twin identical boys who, and then when you kind of take a look at that and you say that, you start to, the mortality, obviously, life kind of goes in, you want things to slow down a bit more so you can enjoy these kids and tell the stories and get the crazy granddad who embarrasses them all the time. Working with kids.
But do you feel that you are as praised as I think you are? Do you feel appreciated, we'll say?
No, probably. You know what? It's funny. I never won any awards from the industry.
Sure.
But I won awards from the audiences. Anytime they had a People's Choice Award, Richard and I may have, I think we both won one night. Him for the American show, me for the Canadian show. And that was probably more important for me, to be appreciated by the audience.
Sure.
whether in theater, and I could tell that appreciation, you get that appreciation, me, and by the audience and how they liked you liked your work. Again, there is that thing we talked about earlier. If you don't go down to the States, you're really not an important actor in the eyes of Canadians. We're terrible.
It's funny because I'm in Pennsylvania and I adore you and your work. So, and I know I'm not alone in that. So it's kind of funny that people in Canada aren't appreciating you the way Americans are, because I'm not thinking of you as a Canadian actor. I'm thinking of you as an actor, as a guy who I enjoy watching. So,
well, I did something right because I worked all the shows that were in town. I worked. I was pretty lucky. I did very, very well in the business. That wasn't important to me to get that sort of thing. But it's interesting that the only thing it would have done is it would have given me power. If I would have gone down done a series in the States, then I could come up to Canada and probably write my own ticket for things. Because as seen on, oh wait, he's been in an American show. He's been in a lead in an American show. It's the nature of the business. And I'm okay. What the hell? Again, I'm okay as well as long as I can get my grandchildren to laugh at me, I'm fine.
Right. And if you ever need an ego boost, you got me and the people behind me who are going, hey, we love that guy.
That's great. That's fun. I enjoy that.
Oh, I'm so glad. I know I'm forgetting something, but I know how to reach you. I'll let you go because granted, I could listen to you forever. I'm enjoying our chat.
I talked to you off, Mac.
No, that's what you're here for. And if I have another podcast that if you are looking to use a podcast to celebrate Beachcombers, I'm there for you. I can always.
Well, I appreciate that because we actually had, and I've just found that out from lately, a whole stream of American fans who were on the border. They used to get Canadian television over the antenna, and some, I guess, on some cable. So the Buffaloes, the upper state New York people, huge Beachcombers fans.
Nice.
Kind of interesting.
Well, and I think hopefully this episode will help spread the word on that.
Well, cool.
Yeah. So
and I will, and when I do go back and get at the MacGyver boxes back there, if I find some call sheets or some scripts, original ones, I'll send you a copy of them so you can.
I would love that. I can't express enough. I mean, I think you get the vibe anyway. How much that would be like a holy grail to me.
Oh, well, you know what? We will do that. We will.
I appreciate that. I love that so much. Thank you. And thank you for the connection. And when you do go on your Facebook page, you're going to notice quite the handsome fella has friend requested you. I'm not going to say who.
Okay. Well, do both. Do the Jackson Davies one, but also do the Beachcomber one.
Sure. Gladly.
It's a lot more fun because a lot of the people that you talked to Pat O'Brien, right?
Yeah.
He's a Beachcomber guy. All these guys are Beachcomber guys, so they come and join us, and it'd be an interesting expression of you to see about that phenomenon on that show, which was very similar to MacGyver. Had great fans.
Well, I have a MacGyver. I'll invite you to that when I get on. It's called the MacGyver Podcast Group page. And
cool.
And Rick Drew's on there, John Shepard, Stephen Downing. Yeah. Feel free to join it and chime in because, boy, I'll tell you, I'll post a picture or make some sort of insightful thought, and everybody will pounce on with, well, it's like you said, it can be a lot of fun with the right group of people.
Yeah, no, that's true. The people who appreciate your time. I know people on the Beachcomber say, "Go, Jackson Davies is talking to us."
Yeah, I love that guy. Did you feel that your character? That was the thing I wanted to ask. Did you feel your character change through the years?
Yeah. On the Beachcomber, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was there actually to fill in. I only had like one line the first time, right? They didn't even give me a name. I had to give my own name, thus Constable. I changed, and I went from one show to being probably number 3 on the call sheet. So it was an interesting, again, kind of similar to that the character on MacGyver. A little bit more quirky, sure. A little bit more fun, a little bit more human, right? But that was the show, and you can, and like I said, we were very eclectic.
Well, that's good because
yeah.
you don't want to play the exact same thing for
I'm too
16
short.
years. You go out of your mind.
I'm too short.
All right. Well, let me let you go, and I will bug you down the road, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll touch bases on that. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, and thank you. I loved our conversation.
So did I.
I will talk to you later.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks. The MacGyver podcast is part of the Forever Adventure Network. Some original artwork by Joseph Arnold. Donations can be made at Patreon to Mac Jackson. Look for our group pages on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at MacGyver Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review. And remember, stay creative, everyone. The Forever Adventure Network. Welcome to the adventure.
Hi, this is Amara from the Always Podcast. I want to make sure you know about another awesome show, the MacGyver SG-1 audio series.
His eyes darted over to Jack's weapon. Sam, start taking all the gunpowder out of these bullets. He stunned Jack by taking the gun from his hands, and with one swift motion released the clip, discharging the bullets in the chamber before handing the empty gun back to the general.
It's written, edited, and performed by Mac Jackson of the MacGyver Podcast. He's bringing together the worlds of MacGyver and Stargate to bring us all new and ongoing adventures.
For some reason, something caused both Jack and MacGyver to glance up at the second-floor office window that hung over the large storage hangar. It was a shadow of a moving figure, a figure who now was staring down at them. Before they could say anything or move, the man ran over to the railing and opened fire on them. In that moment, they each knew they were about to be riddled with bullets.
Get into the epic story and hear how brothers Mac and Jack work together.
Suddenly, he spun on his heels to his brother. Jack, give me your phone. The general quickly took it from his pocket and handed it over. Yeah, it isn't working, you know. No, not as a phone. With that, MacGyver knelt down and smashed Jack's cell phone off the ground and cracked it open. As he pried it apart and reached for his knife, Jack stood stunned. That's my phone.
And how they disagree.
As he turned the engine off, he rechecked the inside of his pocket and pulled out his automatic handgun to check the chamber. As he verified the bullets loaded, he could see the disappointing glare of his brother in the seat next to him. What? This again? I don't like guns, Jack. Yeah, me neither. I like getting shot a lot less.
Subscribe and review today on Apple iTunes and like the Facebook page to keep up on all the latest episodes. I've been catching up on past episodes, and you don't want to miss it.